the deep psychology of I prefer to stay home. Some say that those who like to stay home are antisocial. But in reality, there's a difference between isolation and refuge. Home for certain souls is a silent temple where the heart finally breathes without masks. The world outside can seem too noisy, too demanding, too fast. And there's something inside you that learned early on that safety isn't noise, it's peace. Loving staying home isn't laziness. It's a kind of emotional wisdom that comes from having to survive in unpredictable environments. Home, for you, may never have been just an address. It was the first battlefield, and now it's the altar of reconstruction. When the outside world gets tough, being at home is the purest way to say, in here, nothing needs to prove anything to me. Behind this love of quietude lie childhood memories kept within invisible walls. Children who grew up walking on eggshells learned to find shelter in silence. They became adults who, even with the door locked, continued to feel the echo of that old fear. The difference is that now, silence is not a threat, it's a choice. Perhaps you've learned that social contact is always a risky endeavor. So being at home is the only place where your heart doesn't have to anticipate judgments. No gaze analyzes you, no noise invades your space. And this space, so common for others, is for you the only corner where you can exist without performing. But staying home can also be a healing ritual, a way to reorganize inner chaos, a chance to breathe between storms. It's there, between the coffee and the sofa, that you slowly learn to differentiate loneliness from solitude. One is a wound, the other is a choice, and you begin to discover the pleasure of being self-sufficient, not out of fear, but out of love. There's an almost sacred sweetness in the act of closing the door. Those who love staying home understand the power of no. This no isn't arrogance, it's self-protection. It's the body saying, I've exposed myself enough. It's the heart learning to choose itself. For too long, you forced yourself to be social, smiling, available. Now finally, you're allowed to rest in your own skin. But love for one's home is also a way of reconciling with one's own rhythm. People like that have a rare sensitivity. They perceive when the body asks for a pause, when the soul asks for silence. They are not slow, they are profound. And in a world that idolizes haste, being profound is almost an act of rebellion. Behind this calmness lies an emotional intelligence that is rarely recognized. You feel the world at too high a volume, and home is the volume control that restores your balance. Each lit candle, each opened book, each small ritual is a way of saying, I exist, and that's enough. But the danger lies in confusing comfort with avoidance. Sometimes refuge becomes a prison. The same roof that protects can also suffocate if you never open the window. Because part of the healing process also lies in allowing yourself to be seen even when afraid. Home heals, but human contact completes. And when you learn to leave willingly, not out of obligation, the world ceases to be a threat. You understand that you can carry your home within you even amidst chaos. That is the highest point of healing, when the peace that once existed only within the walls now dwells in your body. There's something almost therapeutic about observing the world from within. While many rush outside in search of stimulation, you've learned to find meaning in small pauses. It's in the sound of the clock, the changing light through the window, the distant voices from the street. Everything transforms into poetry. Loving staying home is a way to slow down time. to remember that not all of life needs to be lived at high speed. Perhaps you grew up without space to be yourself. And now, home is where your essence is finally allowed to exist. There are no criticisms, no demands. Silence becomes an embrace. And every corner of the house becomes a piece of what you wish the world were: kind, predictable, safe. It's an unconscious gesture of reparation, a way of rewriting the past, brick by brick. But there's also a spiritual side to all of this. People who love staying at home tend to seek meaning in the depths. They don't fear the void, they listen to it. And, contrary to what many think, solitude isn't always absence. Sometimes it's presence. The presence of oneself without noise, without distraction. This love for one's own company is revolutionary in a time that teaches you to run away from yourself. Because silence, for those who are healing, is sacred territory. It is in silence that old voices are calmed. It is in silence that the frightened child, who once lived in chaos, learns to believe that she is safe now. And so, little by little, you understand that being at home is more than a preference. It's a way of existing at your own pace. It's an act of resistance and self-love, a reminder that there's nothing wrong with being the kind of soul that flourishes in silence.
Home is also a mirror. It reflects what you feel, even when you try to hide it. There are days when your room seems to welcome you, and others when it suffocates you, because physical space blends with emotional space. And when your mind is full, the house also seems smaller. That's why tidying up your environment is often tidying up your heart. Staying home allows you to observe your own inner self more clearly. It's in the quiet of your own walls that you realize how much of your old fears you still carry, how much you protect yourself without realizing it. And perhaps, deep down, you still fear the unpredictable, because the chaos of the past taught you that outside the home, love can be dangerous. But here's the beauty. Even without realizing it, by choosing to stay home, you are rebuilding yourself. You are giving yourself time. You are learning that presence is not just being with others, it's also being with yourself. Home becomes a mirror of self-acceptance. And it is in this process that a new courage emerges, the courage to open small cracks, a timid invitation to life without losing the peace that has been achieved. Home doesn't need to be a wall. It can be a haven. Because true security isn't in the walls, but in the ability to return to yourself, wherever you may be. Staying home, at its core, is a rehearsal for self-love. It's the body and soul saying together, "Now I can rest."
There are people who, when they are at home, are not hiding. They are rediscovering themselves. Home becomes a space where the heart speaks again after being silenced for so long. It is there that you can hear what the world keeps silent: your own needs, your limits, your hunger for rest. Staying home is like diving into yourself and returning to the surface a little more whole. But there's something curious. The silence that heals you today once frightened you. Remember? When you were little, silence often came before the explosion, the anger, the punishment, the abandonment. And for a long time, you associated quietness with danger. Now, as an adult, that same silence has become a refuge. That's reparenting in practice, transforming fear into security, emptiness into comfort. Those who love staying at home often have a rare sensitivity to the energy of places. Overly crowded places drain you. Disorganized noises hurt. Home is the only environment where your sensitivity doesn't need to defend itself. It's where your body and nervous system relax. What for others is routine, for you is self-regulation, a way to stay whole. But it's important to remember, loving your own space doesn't mean escaping the world. It means choosing environments that don't emotionally harm you. Home isn't the end of the road. It's the starting point. It's where you recharge after the world consumes you. It's where you remember who you are so you don't get lost when you leave. And with time, you discover that true home has no address. It moves with you. It lives in your body, in the calm you carry, in the gaze that has learned to choose peace. Staying home, in the end, is training to live in the world without losing yourself.
There's a quiet magic in creating domestic routines. Cooking, tending to plants, listening to music while tidying up, none of it is mundane. Each simple gesture is an act of reconnection. It's like saying, life can be light, even if the past wasn't. These small, daily actions are the body's way of finding security in the predictable. People who love staying home often create micro-healing rituals. They light candles, make tea, tend to a special corner. It's not just aesthetics, it's symbolic. They are gestures of reparenting, small forms of love that fill what was once lacking. Each detail is a silent message to the unconscious. Now you're safe. But these rituals also speak of emotional autonomy. When the world drains you, it's comforting to know that you can take care of yourself. That calmness doesn't depend on anyone. That your inner home is accessible at any time. That is emotional power. And also maturity. However, even within this comfort, there is a subtle call. Not to get lost in the refuge. Home heals, but life outside also teaches. It is in interaction with the world that you test how much peace you have built. Closing the door is healing. Opening the door is courage. And both are part of the same process. Over time, you realize that true balance lies not between home and the outside world, but between protection and presence. You learn to leave without abandoning yourself, and to return without feeling guilty. And that's when love for home transforms into freedom, not escape. There's a kind of exhaustion that only those who love staying home understand. It's the exhaustion of having been too available, too helpful, too adaptable. It's the weight of having spent years molding yourself to others, almost to the point of disappearing. Staying home is the pause after the invisible war. It's the body saying, I don't want to perform anymore. I just want to exist. And it is precisely in this silence that you begin to recognize yourself again, to notice what you truly like, what you truly feel, what gives you pleasure without needing to be useful. The house becomes a mirror of what was forgotten, the old songs, the dreams that were kept hidden, your own voice. Staying home is often the first step in reclaiming authenticity. But the world doesn't understand this easily. Society associates productivity with presence and solitude with failure. So those who love their own space are labeled as cold, too introverted, unambitious. But what no one sees is that for you, being at home is an act of emotional survival. It's a healthy boundary, a conscious choice to protect yourself. Over time, you learn that you don't need to justify yourself. Peace becomes a priority, and the judgment of others becomes distant noise. You begin to connect with those who understand the value of silence, with those who have also learned to exist with less noise. This type of connection is rare, but real, because it is born from essence, not appearance. And it is at this point that the house ceases to be merely a physical shelter. It becomes an emotional state, that of being at peace with one's own truth, even if the world doesn't understand.
For many, staying home is a way to reconnect with their inner child. That child who dreamed of safety, predictability, and love without fear. When you close the door and feel the comforting silence, something inside you whispers, "Now I am safe." And it is in that instant that the wounded child begins to rest. This relationship with home is deeply symbolic. Each object, each routine, each organized corner is an unconscious way of repairing what was once disorganized within you. Home becomes the setting where the surviving child finally plays in peace. But reparenting isn't just about comfort. It's about creating within yourself the adult you lacked, the one who knows how to care, protect, and make decisions. And by taking care of the home, you also take care of that inner part that previously felt adrift. Home is the place where the adult and the child finally meet and make peace. There is a quiet tenderness in this process because little by little, the home you build outside begins to reflect the home you build inside. Less noise, less hurry, less guilt, more calm, more truth, more love. And this harmony is what transforms the act of staying home into a gesture of profound healing. In the end, you realize that home isn't where the world ends, it's where love begins. And perhaps only now are you learning what it truly means to be at home.
There are days when home seems to breathe along with you. You wake up and feel the air lighter, the ground firmer, the weather gentler. It's in these moments that you realize home is not just the place where you live, it's an extension of your emotional body. When you feel at peace, it reflects light. When you feel overwhelmed, it weighs you down. Home speaks the language of the soul, and learning it is an act of self-knowledge. Loving staying home is, at its core, loving your own rhythm. It's understanding that rest isn't laziness, it's wisdom. That silence isn't emptiness, it's nourishment. It's realizing that the inner world is just as valuable as the outer one, and that sometimes the bravest path is precisely to stop and listen to what's alive inside you. But home also teaches you the boundary between comfort and conformity. It whispers, "Take care of me, but don't become trapped in me." It's a subtle reminder that refuge should be a springboard, not a cell. May the love of stillness not isolate you from the flow of life, but strengthen you to live it with presence. Healing happens when you carry home within you, even when you're away from home. When you learn to breathe calmly in traffic, to feel safe in conversation, to recognize shelter in your own heart. Home then ceases to be a place and becomes a state of mind. And it is in this emotional maturity that you finally understand loving staying at home is not about distancing yourself from the world. It's about getting closer to yourself. It's the beginning of reconciliation with life at a pace that your heart can handle.
Perhaps in the end, all you ever wanted was peace. Not perfect peace, but the kind that allows you to be whole. Staying home symbolizes that desire. The desire for calm love, gentle time, a life that doesn't demand masks from you. And when you learn to love this space, you begin to love yourself with the same tenderness. Home becomes the laboratory of healing. Each day and silence is a rehearsal for self-love. Each pause is a gesture of compassion. And when guilt appears, telling you that you should go out more, you learn to respond with kindness. I am where I need to be. Over time, the fear of the world diminishes. You realize you don't need to hide, only choose where and with whom you feel safe. Home is not an escape, it's a base, and it's from there that you depart, whole, to find new ways of existing. So, when someone calls you too much of a homebody, smile, because only you know what it costs to build this refuge. Only you know the weight of having searched for so long for a place where you could finally rest without fear. And in the end, the question that remains is, when did you realize that home isn't a place, but a feeling?